Was America founded as a Christian nation or a secular one? Perhaps more importantly, what were you taught in school about this one? Hello, fellow historians. I'm Andrea Henderson. And the story of religious liberty in the American Revolution is not really the story of one side winning. It's the story of an unlikely alliance. On one side, you had Enlightenment-influenced figures like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. They believed that conscience should not be coerced by the state. On the other side, you had the evangelical dissenters, especially Baptists, who wanted religious liberty because they had actually experienced what state-supported religion could do. They had been fined, harassed, and some were even jailed for preaching without a license. Thomas Kidd's God of Liberty makes this point especially clear. In Virginia, Baptist preachers like John Waller and James Ireland faced real persecution from civil and religious authorities. Ireland, according to Kidd, was one of roughly dozens of Baptist itinerants imprisoned in Virginia in the 1760s and 1770s. That experience strengthened the Baptist demand for full liberty to preach the gospel. So religious liberty was not just an abstract theory. It was not merely something Jefferson or Madison dreamed up while reading Locke. It was being forced into public debate by dissenters whose lives exposed the problem. James Madison saw this clearly. Kidd notes that Madison objected to the persecution of Baptist ministers and pushed Virginia's Declaration of Rights beyond toleration toward stronger language of free exercise of religion. Toleration implies that government grants permission. Free exercise implies that religious liberty is a natural right. The older world assumed that religion and government belonged together, and many colonial Protestants did not originally believe in religious liberty in the modern sense. They often believed society should support a particular Christian denomination, whether Anglican or Congregationalist. Kidd is blunt on this point. America's original founders did not typically arrive intending to create religious freedom as we understand it today. So how did the change happen? This is where Mark Noll's idea of Christian republicanism comes into play. Noll argues that over the 18th century, Protestant language and Republican political language became deeply intertwined. Words like liberty, virtue, tyranny, slavery, and conscience could function both politically and religiously. By the early 19th century, many Americans could speak of Christian truth and Republican liberty almost in the same breath. But Noll also shows that this fusion developed over time. It was not necessarily inevitable. War with France, fear of Catholic tyranny, and resistance to Britain, and the Revolution itself help Americans merge Protestant moral language with Republican political ideals. By around 1760, Noll says there was already a strong bond between Republican political ideology and traditional religious conviction in the colonies. That helps explain why religious liberty could become both a political and religious cause. For Madison and Jefferson, coercion violated the rights of conscience. For Baptists and other dissenters, coercion corrupted the church. Those were arguments that could work together. J. Judd Owen's comparison of Jefferson and Isaac Backus sharpens this tension. So Jefferson and Backus both defended religious liberty, but they didn't arrive there from the same assumptions. So Jefferson's argument leaned toward Enlightenment ideals and about reason and conscience and the proper limits of government. Backus, by contrast, defended religious liberty because he believed that the state had no rightful authority over Christ's church. So the founding did not speak with one simple voice on religion. It was not purely secular or evangelical or even one clean ideological package. Instead, religious liberty emerged from overlap, sometimes uneasy overlap, between different groups who had different reasons for wanting the same protection. Dreisbach pushes us to take seriously the biblical and moral language of the founding generation without reducing that language to a simplistic claim that all founders believed the same thing. The Bible mattered in the political positioning of the period, but it mattered in different ways to different people. And for some, Scripture provided moral vocabulary, and for others, it offered warnings against tyranny and framed liberty as sacred. And for evangelical dissenters, liberty of conscience wasn't just a political convenience, it was necessary for true religion. So the best way to understand religious liberty in the founding is not to ask, was it Christian or secular? I think a better question is, how did different religious and intellectual traditions cooperate to create a new American understanding of conscience? And the answer is complicated, as is most of history, but there's so much power in that coming together. Religious liberty came from the pressure of lived persecution, the language of Christian republicanism, Enlightenment arguments about conscience, and the political crisis of the Revolution. That's why American settlement on religion was so unusual. So to sum up, the founders did not separate religion from public life in a simple modern sense, but they increasingly separated religious conscience from civil coercion. And that helped make America both deeply religious and unusually committed to religious freedom. Thank you for watching.